to the Q&A Lives for Decoding Your Canine. I am your host, Ness Jones, and with me is Dr. Christina Chambreau, who is a holistic vet, and we are going to be talking about conquering behavioural issues from the inside, which is going to be a really interesting conversation, I feel. Oh, hang on, we've got an Australian, Coffs Harbour, New South Wales. Good on you. All right, Dr. Christina, I'm going to let you take the floor and we'll just have a nice relaxing conversation, then we'll open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions. I have got one question, but I don't know if it's appropriate or not, so we'll just let you talk.
And well, that's one thing I want to say is every question and any question is totally appropriate. Okay. And if by chance it's an area of something that I don't know, I'll say I don't know.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, okay, that's great.
I'm perfectly fine with that. So all questions are great to be in the chat or hand raising later on.
Right.
So, we're talking about, I graduated from veterinary school in 1980 and started doing holistic, especially homeopathy, in 1982. So I've been doing this a long time. And I was working in vet clinics from the age of 12. So from 12 to 32, I was pretty conventional, very conventional. And then from age 32 until now, 74, I have been doing holistic. So I've seen a lot. And I keep learning every single day. I learn from these summits, the ones I get time to listen to. And in the Western world, and many other places as well, we tend to want to fix problems. We want to cut off the lump. We want to give a steroid to stop the itch. Ooh, but then we think drugs and stuff are bad. So then we use an herb to stop the itch. Or we use some topical to get rid of the lump. And with behavior issues and reactive issues, it's sort of the same thing. We often are trying to just fix what seems to be the major problem. And more successfully is when we can take a deep breath. And I know that sometimes you can't. Sometimes things are so difficult that you do need, drugs or other interventions. But we're talking about the majority. For the majority, two things. One is, before there are any problems at all, start paying attention and observing carefully. And read, listen to summits, because you will get so many different opinions that you'll start ferreting out which ones make sense to your heart, which ones make sense for your family and for your dog. And if you're really watching and looking at the early warning signs of internal imbalance, you might notice some non-behavioral clues that things are not quite right, like goop in the corner of the eyes, needing a bath on a regular basis, except, of course, when they've gone out and rolled in kangaroo poop.
Yeah, bird.
And but we want to. So these little things, tartar on the teeth, are clues that inside, in the energy field, things are not balanced. And so if it's early on, or if you've already had a problem for a good while and you've tried multiple approaches, often what's needed is to rebalance that energy field. And the ways that work the most effectively to do that is homeopathy, good Chinese medicine, sometimes chiropractic. Animals can be reactive because they're in pain, but not enough pain, but just, they just don't feel quite right. And so sometimes chiropractic, osteopathic. I've known animals who had a behavioral change And when they went to an osteopath, the osteopath was in the physical exam able to see where the fascia had gotten one of the organs was stuck, and they released that stuckness and the behavior completely cleared up. So this is a talk to expand your thinking in those areas. Now I'm going to back up a little bit for deep healing, and we'll talk more about homeopathy, et cetera, as we go on. But I want to start with, for me, more recently, in the last maybe 10 years, I now firmly know that one of the major causes of any kind of dog reactivity and behavior challenges is us. We don't take time for ourselves. We're stressed. We're not meditating. And we're not recognizing sometimes what we're asking of these dogs. We're asking them to come into our lives, and they're darn good at it. I just read a book, I forget the total title, but it was about Gobi, this dog in the Gobi Desert that followed a runner.
Oh, yeah. I love those stories. Yeah.
A marathon runner, and they ended up being able to bring him home finally to the UK, to Scotland. So they do adapt to us, but the more we can be positive, upbeat, communicating with them, talking to them, really paying attention. Several things happen when we do that. One is we will notice these early warning clues that they're not quite in balance. And then we can take steps to correct that. Two, we'll notice what they need, especially if we offer them choice. And I'm sure there are going to be other speakers talking about a lot of these areas, but offer them choice for food and where they want to pee and which direction they want to go on a walk. And notice when that changes. So keeping a journal is always a good idea to track these changes. So that's one chunk, is the observing, the paying attention to how you are, and really trying to create the life they need. And it's not just by breed. You know, not every herding dogs needs to be herding. Some of them are absolute in-house lap apartment dogs and do fine. So every animal is unique, and you need to find out what that dog needs.
Before you move on, can I just
Sure.
ask you a question?
Yep.
Do you feel like perhaps we as dog guardians don't observe our dogs enough? So I'm always observing my dogs, and I can tell if one of them's off color, or as you say, the gunk in the eye, and not even that. It could just be the way they are behaving, and it could be so subtle. But my husband wouldn't have a clue if there was something up with one of the dogs, if they weren't feeling right, or if they even just needed to go to the toilet. Like, I've been away out of the house, and one of the dogs is like got kind of hassling him constantly, and I'll be on the phone to him, and he'll be like, I don't know what's wrong with this dog. And I'm like, he probably needs to go outside to the toilet. He just doesn't have a clue. So I guess what you're saying is we need to be more observant and pay more attention to what's going on, and look out for the subtle stuff that, like, for me, it's like, what is the dog's normal? If we know what their normal is, then we can identify what's not normal in terms of physical health, but also mental health. So, are they feeling anxious or worried or what have you?
Absolutely. And I recommend that you learn how to do a physical exam, and depending on what's going on in the house, the health of the dog, behavior of the dog, etc., do an exam, a physical and an emotional exam, once a week, once a month. Do it on a regular basis. And then you'll notice a change in hair coat. You'll notice some goop in the eyes. You'll notice that in looking back over the last couple of weeks or month, wow, I didn't realize it, but we're now walking twice as far as we used to, and the coat is more glossy. What cool stuff have I been doing that had that happen? And so you can notice what's working as well as what's not working. And you may go, oh, I started meditating 3 weeks ago, and I think my dog is benefiting from that. Or I switched to a fresh food diet. And that is the next chunk, is there's a whole chunk of things you can do to help dogs' internal state, the energy field, be as balanced as possible. And just briefly, most of you who are here, I know you know this, so I'll be brief and then we can field questions. Number one, feed a species-appropriate diet. Stop thinking about making dog food. Stop thinking about buying dog food, but rather start thinking about what would be a species-appropriate diet for this breed of dog, for this dog. And in observing, you notice what they love and what they don't love and what makes them feel better and not feel better. So the second piece of feeding is whatever level of finances you have, you feed the dog appropriate to that. So if you are buying food, which I recommend highly, at a local farm or a farmer's market, that's what you ought to be doing. You know, if you're eating that food, that's the level of food for your dog. If you're buying food from the grocery store and being cautious about getting the top 10 baddies in terms of needing to buy organic, then that's the level you do for your dogs. The fresher, the better. And it doesn't matter if you feed fresh every day or you feed fresh once a week. It can make a difference. So we'll move on more with food later, but every dog's different, just like people. There is no one right answer. There is no one right expert. There's no one balanced diet, really. Nobody knows what that is, even though they say they do. It can help. And it's okay if you pay for a program that helps you balance the food, but don't obsess over it. Just pay attention. Number two, decrease toxins. And the biggest thing as a homeopathic veterinarian that I have seen affecting the behavior of animals, especially anxiety, reactivity, aggression, has been the overuse of vaccines. So the bottom line is puppy shots, and after that, only legally required rabies, or 1 or 2 rabies. If in your country, state, township, rabies is not legally required, I do suggest you get 1 or 2 to start off with, because it is a bad disease, fatal disease. But otherwise, you have options when they're puppies for natural exposure or just a couple of the viral vaccines, and that's it. If you really want to be super safe, you can do 1 set of titers for parvo and distemper. And if they're fine once, if they have enough antibodies, you don't have to waste your money redoing them.
Right, that's really interesting. Yeah, because my girl, she's only had, well, all my dogs had the puppies, and then I titer tested the 2 of them, and they were fine. But I was like, oh well, I have to keep going back and getting the titer done. But yeah,
nope, you don't. And here's why: because this is a misconception. If the body is exposed, whether naturally or with a vaccine, and produces antibodies, which we can easily measure, they also produce cell-mediated immunity. So that's like memory cells that are just sitting there waiting to be exposed. Antibodies are sitting there ready to leap on the virus or the bacteria. So they are instantly there. Cell-mediated immunity may take a day or 2 to trigger the production of the antibodies. So even if the antibodies dropped to 0, the cell-mediated immunity would come in.
all right.
So it's not, so you don't need to do it, except of course, if you're doing program or visiting hospitals or doing things that require vaccines and they're willing to take titers instead, then you pay for the titers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, treat yourself and your dog to a special meal or a special trip somewhere instead of paying for a titer. Now,
but
the one other
before you, sorry,
yep,
you said you know, a lot of the aggression reactivity cases are caused by vaccine. Can you like give us a little bit of an explanation on that? How does that work?
I'll get to that in a sec. Let me finish up just a minute. Cool. That's okay. The one vaccine that is most frequently asked for is the kennel cough vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason vaccines cause a problem is multiple. One of them is they have adjuvants like heavy metals in them. Some of them do. The other is we're injecting the antigen in a way that the body is not normally exposed to it. And that causes problems with the immune system, which then wreaks havoc down the line. So dogs do not get injected with parvo to get parvo. They eat some poop, so it's an oral coming in. With kennel cough, they do have a nasal vaccine. How do dogs get kennel cough? Through their nose. Therefore, if you, rather than fighting, and it's better, try not to even do that. But I have not found the kennel cough is very effective, number one. But number two, it also isn't very harmful, especially if you do it through the nose. So you said something that is the key to understanding this underlying energy field. You said that the vaccines cause the problem. And if I said that, my bad. Vaccines trigger if the underlying energy field imbalance is sensitive to vaccines. The vaccine then triggers it to be out of balance, and the out of balance energy field causes the symptoms, whatever the symptoms are, physical or emotional. So that's why the key is if it's a minor problem for the animal, they're pushed off balance, maybe a week, maybe a few days, a week, a month after the vaccine, and all of a sudden you notice more irritability and reactivity. It might be that all you have to do is the vital force may not be too far off balance. And if you just provide extra nourishing and some soothing approaches and some behavioral work, everything clears up in a week or two. If it's pushed too far off balance, that's when you try a whole lot of things over the next 6 months and it's just not, you're not making progress. And that's when you need to then use one of these deeper approaches to rebalance the energy field. And that's true whether the symptoms that are being caused are physical or emotional. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the third area that you have control over is, we sort of addressed it by observing your dog, is the appropriate mental and physical stimulation. And physical stimulation isn't just walking. Physical, and rather than stimulation, I think I would say physical well-being. And that may be making sure they're sleeping enough. Do you have any of your speakers talk much about the need of dogs to sleep a lot?
Yeah.
Good. So make sure you listen to those talks. This is actually quite new for me. It was
they sleep. Depending on the dog, they can sleep up to 17 hours a day, and that's not even a puppy. Yeah. So, and you don't realize, and I like working with anxiety cases, I find that, you know, maybe the dog ends up on medication. They say, oh, I don't like that because my dog's different and they're a zombie now. But actually what they could be seeing is the dog's finally getting enough sleep, the appropriate amount of sleep for that dog, and they're actually getting a deep, good rest, and that anxiety level kind of helps with that. So yeah.
As long as it's short term, then that gives them the break that's needed for sure. You don't want to have to do it long term, but it is to figure out ways. And just a dog lying there noticing you is not sleeping. So when we look at physical and mental enrichment or nurturing, finding ways to have your dogs, allowing them to really sleep, a separate room, a quiet area, loving being in their crate and then putting a blanket around it, whatever it takes. It's like, and it's really exploring that, or cuddling with you and you taking time. So it is amazing though. I mean, here it was, I'm a veterinarian, holistic veterinarian, and had no idea until, well, within the last 5 years that dogs slept that much.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So these things are very important. And those are the areas that you'll be listening to these other speakers speaking about.
I think it's really interesting, like for us ourselves, I know what I'm like. If I don't get enough sleep, I get cranky. And so with a dog, if they're not getting enough sleep, obviously you're going to see behavioral issues crop up for that very reason.
Absolutely. So now let's look at what is possible with homeopathy and Chinese medicine, chiropractic, and other energy approaches. Ooh, let me add in one before I get to that. Other energy approaches is within your control. So I know that you've had speakers on this, so I'm just going to mention a few. If you learn Reiki, which is readily available to learn anywhere, including online, and Kathleen Prasad of Sarah even has just a meditation you can do with your animals with intending healing. So learn Reiki, theta healing, Tellington T-touch, and all of the Tellington method approaches. When you do these Dr. Ed, I know you've had Dr. Ed speak. I cannot pronounce his last name.
It's Bassingthwaite.
Yeah,
it's
right.
The Welsh name. I've spoken to him a few times now, and yeah, it's Dr. Edward Bassingthwaite. The healing bit. Yeah.
He's coached me on that a lot, and I still can't do it. So learning these approaches, if you do them on a regular basis, like Reiki, I recommend you sit there and offer Reiki to all living beings in the house once a day when there's no problems. That's one of the best preventatives you can do. Learning heart math, learning any of these. I mean, the planet is so loving now. So many people are paying attention to love. Listen to Bernie Siegel talking about, he brought his dog home from the vet when the vet said euthanize him. And his son said, when he called him to say, come in and see the dog, say goodbye, the son said, well, Dad, we don't do that here. Bring him home and we'll love him. And he lived another 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So very often it is as simple as one of those. So what can be done? I can't so often. Now I've been doing homeopathy and not Chinese medicine. So I'm going to be telling you about homeopathy. I have heard about from other veterinarians equally good results with Chinese medicine, whether it's Chinese herbs, acupuncture, or acupressure, which is another healing modality you can learn yourself. There was a dog, it was a German Shepherd, and the owner was 70, in her late 70s, and it was about 100-pound shepherd. Loving, perfectly wonderful at home, but when she would take the dog for a walk, it practically dislocated her shoulder. And maybe it did dislocate her shoulder once. And she had been to trainers. She was really doing all that she knew to do. Now, this was 25 years ago, so not as much was available necessarily then, but she was trying her best. And she had gotten to the point where she had to hire dog walkers, which was sad because she liked going for walks with her dog. And sometimes she would hire a dog walker to take her dog for a walk, and she would walk along with them.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, at least she still had that option. Yeah.
Exactly. But still, what a challenge. She couldn't just go do it. And so I carefully, what we do in homeopathy is we're looking to see who is this individual dog. So I asked about, did the dog prefer to be hot or cold? Was it better in the summer, the winters, storms? Was there anything about feeding that made a difference for this dog? Were there physical symptoms, history of physical symptoms? When did this behavior begin? All of those questions. And what showed up with this dog was the dog was actually fairly well behaved even on walks, but it would explode if it saw a number of things like a squirrel or just heard something maybe, and then it would just pull. It was like this explosion was the word she used. And she also noticed that around that time, the eyes would get red. And just the dog and the tongue would seem redder. So there was this redness. And the dog really preferred to be cold, did not do as well, and was more quiet and lethargic in the heat of the Washington, D.C. summers, which are very hot and humid. And this fit very closely a homeopathic medicine that had been tested on people. All homeopathic medicines are tested on people, and we now have over 7,000 that have been tested. They're made from herbs, minerals, body substances. They're diluted and energized by shaking them hard. There's a whole procedure that the pharmacies do. You don't do this. This is what you buy the remedy already made. And it fit one called belladonna, which is actually made from deadly nightshade.
Mm.
And because of the level that this dog was showing, 200C strength seemed appropriate. So we gave one dose, 3 or 4 or 5 of the sugar pellets to this dog, easy to give, one time. And within a week, this dog was 70% better. And better in 2 ways: less frequent explosions and not pulling her arm as much. And so she was able to not have the dog walker anymore. And she could take the dog for a walk because it no longer was dislocating her shoulder. She still had concerns. Over the next month, the dog continued with no further treatment to improve. And then after about a month and a half, she reported back that he was starting to get worse again. And when I asked what was going on, there had been some things happening in the household that could be triggering this, some emotional family stuff going on. So we repeated the dose of the 200C belladonna. And this time it lasted again for about a month and a half. And there was no trigger this time, apparently, and the dog started to get a little worse. So then we went up in strength to a 1M. Now, I don't want you all running out and getting belladonna. The belladonna was because it fit this dog, okay? And the same thing with the potency. You need to, know more. But as a professional, having trained in this and taught veterinarians how to do this, I knew what to do. So at this time we went up to a 1M, and that dog was absolutely fine. No explosions, no problems. I mean, it would get hyper, but it would sort of explode in place instead of pulling and rushing off. It would go, oh, something's happening, something's happening. Okay, something's happening, instead of woo, like that. And the dog was fine for another, year and a half, 2 years. And then it needed to get its rabies vaccine.
Uh-oh.
Within 3 weeks after the rabies vaccine, it seemed to be fine, but all of a sudden started slipping again. We repeated the one in Belladonna, and the dog was fine. I think, the dog was older when I started, so maybe it needed, 1 or 2 doses, and it lived a full, long life. So that's one of many examples of how homeopathy can work. And sometimes it takes more than one treatment and more than one remedy in order to have it work. But the key is, if you are wanting to work with a homeopathic veterinarian, and I'm no longer in practice, so can't work with me that way. I do pet health advising now, where you call me and I sort of help you figure out what's your next step. Does it sound like there's an imbalance that needs homeopathy or Chinese medicine, or is it more trying a different behavioral approach, or maybe something with you? So, or flower essences, essential oils, things like that. So I can help you in that way, but I'm no longer practicing. But you want to be sure, whether it's Chinese medicine or chiropractic or homeopathy, that the veterinarian is not just saying, I'm going to work with the separation anxiety. I'll fix the fear of thunderstorms. The veterinarian should be asking all those types of questions that I was just telling you about with this dog. Who is this individual dog? And depending on what modality they're using, they'll apply those questions, but they want to look at the whole dog and the whole family and the history, because we only have one of these vital forces. So it produces a symptom at age 4 months, a symptom at 2 years, a symptom at 6 years, a symptom at 10 years. It's the same energy field. So we add up all of those symptoms to find what's needed right now for chronic behavior problems.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, there's got to be, not maybe with that dog particularly, but I mean, a lot of cases you could go down the holistic route with the homeopathy or whatever it is, the Chinese herbs, or even prescribe medication if it's warranted. But then for most dogs, you also have to do that hand in hand with some sort of behavioral modification training.
Absolutely. Well, that was what I started with. Okay. Right. So I was saying the first most important thing is you. Who are you? How are you causing, triggering, affecting the problem? Observing, creating safety, working with the behavior approaches, all those ones we talked about, and the energetic approaches. So all of those are absolutely critical.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the gut-brain connection, because I mean, it's been sort of over the years got popular with humans, but it also applies to dogs. So how important is it, do you feel, for behavioral issues?
Well, one of the first thing I started with was food.
Yeah.
And having a healthy gut, absolutely. And I've just learned within the last 2 months, it's not just about a healthy gut. Now we know that we now know, and I was at a University of Georgia reunion last week at the Orlando big veterinary conference, and I was talking to some freshmen, and they now are being taught about the microbiome. There's a microbiome in the mouth, in the stomach, in the small intestine, in the large intestine, on the skin. When we bathe our dogs, we can be getting rid of the microbiome. So healthy dogs shouldn't need a bath. No. And if you have bathed a dog because they're stinky, rolled in something kind of thing, let them dry and then let them go out and roll in the dirt and brush them off. I mean, you don't want them to get muddy again, but you want them to be re-inoculating their microbiome. The best way to have a healthy microbiome is to feed a fresh food diet, local, seasonal, lots of variety. And then second to that is you can be more aggressive. You can do test the microbiome. You can you can do probiotics. But if you're doing probiotics, you need to rotate them. There is no one right probiotic. And it's really hard. You may find that let your dog tell you. You may find that one probiotic, they don't want to eat it. So don't use it. When you finish a probiotic, move to a different one. And then notice, because you're keeping notes, notice how they feel overall. Is one helping the other? And here's another one where there's a lot of disagreement. There are no one right answers to anything. I was trained decades ago when we first started talking about probiotics that if they were on antibiotics, you needed to give a probiotic.
Mm.
And that made sense to me, sort of. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, they talk about
it seemed okay.
Yeah, the antibiotics are the bad bacteria or something, and the probiotics are supposed to be the good bacteria that counteracts, yeah.
And so again, now here's where we have differing opinion. But recently, in the last year, I have heard, and I'm sort of leaning this way a little bit, is when you're giving antibiotics, it's not the time to be focusing on short-term antibiotics. It's not the time to be focusing on building the gut health, other than feeding fresh food. As soon as you stop the antibiotic, if you're killing the bacteria, they don't just kill, an antibiotic doesn't just kill a bacteria. We have trillions of bacteria in our body. And so it's killing good ones as well as bad ones. Wait until it's done and then bring in the probiotics. Now, I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, but it's interesting new information to think about.
Good to discuss and find out more about it. Yeah,
absolutely. I'd love to have people ask questions if they've got some questions.
Well, but before, so if anybody
and you had a question too.
Yeah, I do. So before we get to that, Constance says, when you were talking at the beginning about encouraging people to search for information, she says that's a refreshing approach. And Jennifer said, I think we were talking about sleep then, about, getting the dog to get enough sleep. She says she goes down to a cafe to give her a chance. Her dog.
That's a good idea. She goes out of the house.
Yeah.
So that she can do that. And actually, for Constance, one of the challenges of looking for information, of searching for information, particularly on the internet, is
so hard. So
confusing. We'll get a lot of different opinions, and that's fine. What you don't want to do is assume that any one of them is correct or right. I sort of said this earlier. You want to look to see what makes sense to you, and then try one or two at a time and carefully see if there's a general, I feel better, even if the symptom is still there. So if you notice that the noise sensitivity is still there after you've tried something, but they're feeling better, they're brighter, they're more active, they're perkier, then hang in there with what you're doing and then maybe add in a different approach. So if you change the food, now maybe you need to focus on something specific for anxiety. In terms of maybe a flower essence, or in terms of training behavior like that. So you want to be careful about the information you get. And it doesn't matter whether it's a veterinarian or whether it is a trainer who's got 25 certifications. That doesn't mean they are right for your dog. So you are their advocate. You're the one to really be there. Now, one good source of information, and again, with conflicts, because we offer multiple opinions, is something called the Holistic Actions. And Holistic Actions is a membership site, but we also have things for free. One of them is how to find a holistic vet that can do homeopathy, Chinese medicine, etc. And so you go to holisticactions.com/select. And there's a great article to read with all the websites you have to go to.
Is that
And
holistic with a W or with just with the,
no,
because I know
just
it's spelled differently depending on where you are in the world. Yeah.
well, yeah, that's something that in the United States, we have definitely, the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association,
Holistic
I
with
was
a
around
H.
when we first formed it, and we argued for 2 years whether it should be the H or the WH.
Ah, I prefer the H without the W. It's just my personal, I just prefer it, but yeah. Can I ask you this question? Oh, have you finished with that? Or
yeah.
okay. So Sheridan sent this one through. It's quite a long one, but she's got a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. It's 5.5 years old. She's had it since it was 8 weeks old, but due to COVID lockdowns, and this is a common story,
Yep.
didn't get all the socialization she should have had. So it's female. She said, I used to be able to say to anyone she's very friendly, but about 2 years ago, so when the dog was about 3.5, she started pouncing on certain dogs for no reason at all. I thought at first it was submissive. Submissive dogs that she would do it to. But she went to do it to a friend's dog who is now 13 and who my dog has spent many hours with as a pup. So she knows it very well, obviously. She doesn't bite, but flattens them, and there is a lot of noise, terrifying the dog and the owner. Once she's done it, she's fine, and the dog can jump all over her, and she won't care. She says she is an alpha dog and had a litter of puppies last year, but this behavioral started before that. Any help would be greatly appreciated. She is worse if the dog is in her house. Well, that's kind of understandable. I can tell when she is going to pounce as the wagging tail stops dead, and then she goes. So it's not, I don't know if that's something you can answer or not. It sounds like a behavior, but I guess she's asking why.
Well, it also depends on what she's already tried for behavior approaches. The first key thing, though, that people don't do is that they don't think. So very importantly is to look at 2 years ago when this apparently started, and then think back a month, 2 months, 6 months before that. What happened? So it was sort of towards the end of COVID to be 2 years ago. Maybe it was just after she started coming out after COVID and meeting other dogs, but maybe not. Maybe they moved. Maybe now she was going back to work. Maybe she just got a rabies vaccine or a DHLPP, lepto, all of that. Maybe it was a diet change. So first, it's to see what was the trigger that pushed the energy field off balance to have this happen. And then the next step is to start going through what we've talked about. So the first step is once animals are misbehaving, we tend to communicate. So she notices that the tail isn't wagging anymore, and she thinks, oh my God, it's going to be happening. Mm-hmm. And it's good to recognize the tail not moving. More importantly would be to see if there's even an earlier clue and then do something different. So at that point, have them sit. At that point, turn around and face the other way. At that point, so training wise. Now, she may be doing that already. She may have been trying all of that. And then, so a couple of other options. One is to talk with an animal communicator. And animal communicators can be very valuable. And there is no one that is correct. There are multiple different, each animal communicators, the very, very best ones in the world, can be off for your dog. And so sometimes, so again, if it doesn't make sense to you, don't use it. But if it does make sense, then it's worth a try. So if she said, well, you bought me you switched me to a harness and you had a bright red leash, and that bright red leash just upped my end. I just felt jittery around it. And so now I go for certain things trigger me to go. And if you would just get me a green leash, I wouldn't do it anymore. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So it's worth it. Now, the other thing then would be to find a homeopathic veterinarian or a good Chinese medicine veterinarian to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be, since she has been bred, to really pay attention if there were any changes after she had her puppies. And also what her estrus cycle was just before the behavior started. And don't blame things on not being socialized, on being abused when they were young. Because lots of animals have that condition in their life, but only some of them develop behavior problems, not all of them. So therefore, it's a clue. You can think about it, but don't blame it on it. It's like it can get fixed. And trauma of any sort definitely can trigger all sorts of reactive issues. So Heather has sent a message directly to me about recommending feeding a raw diet. So I recommend feeding a species appropriate diet using the freshest possible food. I do not think that there is any one right diet for dogs, just as there's no one right diet for people, as long as you're using fresh ingredients. So it could be homemade raw, homemade lightly cooked, homemade crock pot. It could be commercially purchased raw, commercially purchased lightly cooked, commercial, like that. The one thing missing with commercial diets, fresh ones, semi-fresh ones, they're usually ground. So you need to be adding in something to keep the teeth clean. Big hunks of meat, like heart meat, especially for them to sink their teeth into.
All right. So Constance says, I do look for well-informed information. There are now vets who are supporting complementary medicine. Thank goodness. Erin asks about eggs.
Oh, right.
Are you currently eliminating eggs from the diet?
Okay, so right now we're in the midst in the US. I don't know about other countries.
Yeah, the bird flu thing.
Of the avian flu, of the bird flu. And we have had over the decades many problems along the line where the media just totally blows it up. And I've been tracking this for about a month and a half now, in 2 months, in our CAVM complementary and alternative veterinary medicine listserv, as well as speaking with people who I respect, who would have more information on this. And the bottom line, there is no one. I definitely get differing opinions on this. So we have holistic veterinarians that aren't recommending changing what you're feeding, that they continue to feed raw meat. Eggs is not an issue. Eggs are fine to feed, but raw milk from cows, we haven't had any reports from goats, so goat's milk should be absolutely fine. The numbers are quite small. When you look at the percentage of animals in the US that are fed raw meat versus the percentage of dogs, it's just in cats anyway. It's not even in dogs. So shouldn't even be going there on this one. Sorry. Yeah, it's not even in dogs. It's just in cats. So for those of you with cats, that's the answer, is if you feel like you need to, you definitely can cook it. And even there are differing opinions. 120 degrees all the way through seems to be good for most viruses. But for my cats, I'm not worried about it. I'm using local meat, and I would go with that. Dogs, you don't have to worry about that. And dogs, absolutely fine to feed eggs, raw or cooked,
Yeah.
whichever they prefer.
I know there's some, I think it's pretty old school, but some people saying, oh, you shouldn't feed the whites, you should only feed the yolks. I give mine the whole of the egg, raw egg.
Yeah, when you give the whole of the egg, it's fine. It's not a problem. It was biotin, and it was supposed to, or it was something in it supposed to tie up, but that is old school. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. And Jennifer said that her dog likes the eggshells. Eggshells are one of the ways you can introduce calcium if you're not feeding raw meaty bones as part of your diet, like chicken necks, turkey necks, things like that. And Jennifer also wanted to know more about flower essences. Flower essences are absolutely wonderful, and they're totally safe. You cannot harm with them. There are books that on using the Bach flowers for animals. And then there are multiple companies like Jackson Galaxy. Now, many of his say for cats, but it's equally as good for dogs. It's just that's sort of how they're doing their site. And those were formulated by Dr. Jean Hovey. And then there's Pet Essences out of Southwest US and Green Hope Essences out of New Hampshire. And then there are the various different Australian bush essences. There's the Alaskan essences, the Hawaii essences, but those companies, as far as I know, aren't making combinations for animals. And I may be wrong on that. Do you know about that? Are there some Australian ones that are doing combinations for specific animal problems?
Yeah, there are Australian ones, but I'm not really well versed in.
Okay,
Yeah.
definitely worth checking it out. Rescue Remedy you can get anywhere. That's the Bach 5-flower combination. And
Yeah,
that's
the Australian
available
one's
in,
called Australian bushflower essences, but I don't know
Yes.
much about it. Yeah.
I just don't know that they have specific animal. They didn't used to, and I haven't checked in the last 4 or 5 years. So Jennifer, you can use the Bach ones, but you might want to, so pick up a couple, there are at least 2 books out there on Bach flowers for animals. And then explore the other ones. I've got a lot of free articles on my site, and I have one on flower essences. So you can definitely go there. And my site is my name,
Yeah, can you type it in
ChristinaChambreau.com.
the chat box? Yeah, just type it in the chat box, just to people can just click on it. While you're doing that, the rest of her question says, also, is there anything that could help support when I give rabies vaccines? I'm so glad we don't have rabies here. It's not something I have to worry about. I dread it because it makes her cranky for 10 days. Gosh, I have had titer, but it's legal requirement to get the vaccine up to date if we go to travel. Yeah. Dog had very high titer, so I'm guessing I need to damp down immune reaction. Dippy, I don't know what that is, vaccine. What's the Dippy vaccine? Not so bad. But...
That's distemper hepatitis
gotcha. Yeah.
parvovirus, and the I is an L for lepto. Everybody thinks they're getting a shot, and they're getting 5 to 6 different shots all combined in one. And it doesn't matter whether you got a tiny dog or a 150-pound dog, they're getting the same dose. So number 1, high titer is good. You don't have to damp down the immune reaction. That's not the issue. And hopefully you don't have to get it more than every 3 years on the rabies vaccine. Because she gets cranky for 10 days, you can definitely try flower essences. The Jackson Galaxy Essence Company, or jacksongalaxy.com, he calls them solutions, and there is a vaccine detox. And you can give that before and after. And again, flower essences, 100% safe. If you know Reiki or some of the other energy modalities, Reiki takes the bad out of things. It shifts the energy to match the animal it's going to. So you hold the syringe, the rabies syringe in your hand. What? Your vet won't let you do that? Well, one of 2 things. Get another vet right now, form your team now, don't wait till they're sick, And number two, you say, I've heard bad things about vaccines. I know they can cause tumors at the injection site. That's scientific. So I'm going to pray over the syringe if you don't mind. And you do Reiki on it or other energy or prayer. And then after the injection, at the injection site, you do energy healing. Then you offer energy healing for the next few days. Those are the most important. And well, the other most important is be sure they're healthy when they're getting their rabies vaccine. And because often you need to put it off by a month. You might want to get it if it's every 3 years and you have illnesses that sort of come and go, even if you're doing it 3 months early, it'd be better to do it when they're healthy than to wait those extra 3 months. And if you're in the United States, there are new recommendations from the American Veterinary Medical Association, although many states don't recognize it, that at least if they've had 1 or 2 rabies vaccines and they get bit, they will not need the 6-month quarantine. They simply get another rabies vaccine. But again, legally, you have to know what your local area is. And when you're traveling, that's different, of course.
In Australia, the AVA, our Australian Veterinary Association, we don't have rabies, but years ago, it used to be you have to have the vaccination every year to go to, kennels or what have you. And then the AVA came out and said, no, we're going with every 3 years as a protocol. So if you're going to the kennels, if you've got to put your dog in kennels or whatever, it's every 3 years. But unfortunately, a lot of the vets don't tell the dog guardians that because, they're making money out of. So while I don't want to be derogatory about vets at all, but I feel like it's really sort of sad. Like they're in the business to help animals, and yet they're not telling their customers and their clients that actually we don't have to do this every year. Or perhaps they just don't know, because it's probably a business decision. We're going to keep these dogs coming in. And if no one tells them, then if they're not keeping up with what the AVA recommends or what have you, how do they know?
That is part of it. But the other part of it is fear. Veterinarians are afraid of a lot of things and they're not using common sense. We're not very well trained in veterinary school. We're trained to be very effective as surgeons, very effective at fixing things. We're not trained to build health. So you are in charge of building health in your animals. And if you appropriately build health, then, and this gets back to Jennifer as well, I would actually, Jennifer, suggest you work with a homeopath at this point, because your dog is definitely having a behavioral reaction after the rabies vaccine. And so if you can work with a homeopath who can rebalance the energy field permanently with a remedy, then every time you need to give the rabies vaccine, you could give that homeopathic medicine, which leads into Beth saying fuchsia, which is a homeopathic medicine. So there are 7,000 homeopathic medicines. It is not one size fits all. Fuchsia was a remedy that got its reputation for helping with vaccine problems because of people getting smallpox vaccine and having a reaction to it. It fit the picture for smallpox, doesn't fit the picture for every vaccine, doesn't necessarily fit it for dog vaccines or cat vaccines. Other people give hypericum. Again, one size doesn't fit all. Other people give ledum because those are for puncture wounds. So while it doesn't hurt to give any homeopathic remedy that you feel needed after a vaccination, you need to know it may not do anything. So you have to be as watchful. Don't go, oh, okay, I won't have any problem now. Don't, because you probably won't. It's probably not doing anything. And so you want to be as careful if you've done anything, even if it's the flower essence, et cetera, you want to be paying attention after vaccines. Is there a change? Look for early changes. Look for energy level and appetite and mood and all of those. So you want to really be on high alert.
I made I used to put eardrops in my dogs now have got pointy ears. They don't actually get gunky and stuff, but I've had Rottweilers in the past, and because Rotties have got the floppy ears, sometimes they get gunky, and I made a thuja and apple cider vinegar mix to put drops as opposed to the stuff you can buy at the vet.
So did you ever try
Did
you ever try just apple cider vinegar?
No, but I would now. Because yeah, I definitely would now.
Right,
just try
because you
that.
don't
Mixed
usually
with water, obviously. You wouldn't want to pour it straight
sure.
in.
But I mean, it's probably not the thuja that is doing it. And that is one of the early warning signs of an energy imbalance. So dogs should not continually get.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was mainly.
heavy
It gets very humid here in summer.
Doesn't matter.
The floppy ears.
Doesn't matter.
No, okay.
If they're healthy, they will not have problems.
Yeah.
So it's a clue that there's an underlying energy imbalance. You can check on my website, or if you want to buy the Healthy Animals Journal. Did we do that as a gift? I forget what our gifts were this time. The list of early warning signs is one of the articles on my website.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can see all those little things.
Yeah.
But anytime there's any repeated problems, that's.
Yeah. Beth did mention Dr. Ruth Roberts, who has a program training holistic pet health coaches, very thorough program. Okay.
There actually are a large number of programs out there. The key thing that I would say, again, back to my initial, and you commented as well, is every good program, you need to be, again, paying attention. Don't take it as gospel, because most of the programs out there are giving one person's opinion about how we should do things. So you want to look for, you can do that, and then also be looking for programs that are offering multiple different opinions from leading experts.
It's such an important point, because if you don't know whatever it is, whether it's dog training scenario or what to feed or whatever it is, you think that whoever you go to is the expert, they have more knowledge. And really what we should be doing, as you said, is okay, I've gone and got the knowledge from them. Does it sit right with me? I'm also going to go over here and get the knowledge, and then figure out what, like you said, advocate for your dog, but also what resonates with you. And just because someone is the expert and knows more than you doesn't mean they are telling you what you need to hear or the right. Beth says there's a lot of scam programs. Yes, there's that too. Yeah.
Well, there are some. I don't think there are very many scam programs, but there definitely are ones that are too narrow in what they're saying, and they're insisting they're right. And there are also some very free programs out there, or less expensive programs, which may or may not be a good thing. So I'm going to finish up here with, or point to what you just talked about. Yes, you're going to explore what's possible. You're going to decide what you want to try, whether it's food or behavior, et cetera. And then you have to know how do you know if it's deeply helping or if it's maybe even making things worse. So in homeopathy, I love homeopathy, and I encourage everybody to learn homeopathy, because not that I want you prescribing for your animals necessarily, except for acute problems, but it gives you a framework of how to understand health and illness. So Don Hamilton's book, Homeopathic Care of Cats and Dogs, is great because it's practical and it gives you info about conditions of the different body systems, a few homeopathic remedies that might help, and reemphasizes there's 7,000 remedies out there. If this doesn't really fit your animal, it's probably not going to work. And so the different responses that he talks about in chapter 2 and 3 is the nature of illness and the nature of cure, or nature of healing. So when we give any kind of treatment or training, you can have suppression, which is the symptom goes away, but they're not better overall. They may seem like they're behaving, but if you really pay attention, they might be sort of down and ears down and not bright-eyed anymore. If you try a food and you notice that the hair coat is not as glowing, then you might be moving in the wrong, then it might be suppression. Now, palliation is when you have to keep doing the treatment. Now, definitely with behavioral issues, you do need to maintain, not because it's a problem, but when you're going for a walk and you're in a new area that you've never been before, the dog may not remember its skills there, and you may need to be proactive that way. That's not the same as palliation. Palliation is a symptom goes away, but it keeps coming back. And it could be that you're training and they get better, or you're doing flower essences and the anxiety's less, or you're doing, any approach, and then it just keeps coming back and they're not feeling better overall. A cure is the condition slowly gets better depending on how long it's been there. And in the process, while the condition's getting better, they're feeling better. They're happier. They could be almost comatose, very ill dog. But you notice their eyes are brighter a few days after treatment. And then maybe a week later, they're lifting their head up. And then maybe like that. I was treating a dog that was paralyzed from a disc. And the first thing was the dog was brighter and happier, just with homeopathic treatment. And then the tip of the tail moved. And then it slowly got better and better until it was walking completely normally. So that's a cure, is they're moving towards health. So Jennifer asked if Thuya will help deep healing. Absolutely, Thuya can help deep healing, but only if it matches the condition, the individual symptoms and the individual characteristics of that animal. She had parvo as a pup, and other pups didn't get it. So she might have had parvo. That means she's protected for life for parvo, against parvo. If you ever have an illness, you're pretty much a viral illness, you're pretty much protected for life with that. So, but I would not be giving Thuya, I would not give homeopathic remedies except for acute problems unless you've studied. Now, if you become a member of the Holistic Actions, I actually taught 2 weekend introductory courses and 1 2-day intermediate course of homeopathy for animals. Each one of those was probably $400 to $600, and those are included with your membership. So and we also have a thread in the forum on homeopathy and frequently talk about it, since Dr. Jeff, who created Holistic Actions, and myself are big into homeopathy, but we also talk about a lot of other things.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we shall let you go.
And it's fine if anybody wants to raise their hand. And
thank you, Tammy. I have to give a shout out to Milena, who is in Greece, Athens, I think. And it's ridiculous. She comes to all of these, and I'm just amazed that she stays up so late. Milena, I hope I'm saying that right, Melina. What time is it there? Must be close to 2 or something, 2 a.m. if you're still awake. She's typing.
And some people are night owls. So
Boy, that is true. That is true. I'm not one of them.
Me neither. I'm a morning person.
Yeah. I think I'd stay up later if it wasn't so hot here at the moment. Like I mean, I'd stay up later and get up later. Beth says, I have a dog with chronic air gunk from keloiding after a bad crop job. Oh. I used to have a variety of homeopathic remedies to calm the ears down. They get quite inflamed and uncomfortable. The homeopathics worked so quickly. Now I'm using it for eczema. Wow, that's cool.
But here's the thing, if you only had ear problems and now you have generalized eczema, you're not getting a deep cure. You're probably just palliating, because it shouldn't be getting worse. You shouldn't have to keep treating. When the proper remedy is given, all things get better and no new diseases appear unless something really triggers them to appear. So it's
she's
wonderful.
Hang on, no, she's got the eczema. So the
Oh,
dog
it's on her. Oh, okay.
Well,
Very
I hope
good.
it's working for
And
you,
you can definitely learn how to do homeopathy on your own. Just you really do need to do a little studying. That's all I'm saying. So congratulations. That's wonderful. Good success. And as long as the ears are completely cured and not repeating and not continuing, then you're good. If you have to keep treating them, frequently, then you need to do more deep healing. Thank you, Karen. I try to be clear as much as possible. I'm glad. I like it when I know that I have been.
Oh, Jennifer says your voice has calmed my dog down. My dog too.
Oh,
So thanks as she is settling to sleep. Oh, that's nice. Not my voice then, Jennifer. Just Dr. Christina's.
well, I think it's actually, I would say that it's having a room full of loving people who are focused on having happy, healthy, well-behaved, not well-behaved, but happy, healthy animals, dogs in their house.
Yeah.
The group energy is amazing. And Beth, you do not need a local homeopath. Homeopathic veterinarians do work virtually. So again, go to the link I put in the chat earlier. And everybody should know how to save the chat. You go to the 3 buttons at the top, or different. I mean, I'm on a computer.
I'm on a computer too. Yeah.
And then you can save the chat.
Well, I didn't know that.
And it's good. And it's good actually if you tell everybody that every time.
Yes, I shall
Now,
do.
if you're on an iPhone or something, it's in a different place. So yeah, so if you do that, Beth, you go to holisticactions.com/select, and it's a whole article on how to find a vet.
Yeah.
And again, I put my email in there, healthyanimals@aol.com, or it's actually healbyanimals@aol.com. Same thing. So if you have a question or two, go ahead and ask me. And that's also if you want to do pet advising appointment, you could email me there as well.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Christina, for sharing your knowledge. And I actually have 3 dogs in here, and they're all passed out asleep. So.
Oh, I love it. I just want to make sure you had a question at the very beginning. Did you ask that?
No, I asked you that already.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Just wanted to make sure you got that one out.
No, it's cool.
And thank you again. I want to thank every one of you for coming and for having that commitment to your animals. And I don't know myself what it takes to put on having regular calls like this and Q&A calls and summits, but I know it takes a lot. And so I want to thank you so very much for doing this and continuing to help people help their animals.
Yeah, I just want to be able to give people access to information they might not get. So, yeah.
Oh, it's so important because, as I said, there's no one right answer. And so the more information that you learn, the more you can take a breath and look to see whose approach am I going to try next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of almost shopping around, isn't it? I mean, I always say to with people with dog training, not necessarily health, but health as well, but shop around, find out what works, and yeah, go from there. So find out what resonates. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Christina. Have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, whatever it is. Oh, hang on. Beth, yes, it will be on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@Ness Jones. I'll put that in the
Okay.
chat too, because that's, where is it here? Okay, it's YouTube, youtube.com/@
Well, I have to add another little piece here since we're still here. The other thing to remember is that each of us, our dogs, each dog, each person, we're on a journey, a soul journey, a journey of health, a journey of learning, whether it's one lifetime or multiple lifetimes. And most important is just relishing and loving every moment and not ever feeling guilty, not ever thinking you've done something wrong, as long as you had the best intentions. And whether you're with an animal for 2 years or 10 years, or, you know, a Great Dane for 20 years, or regardless of how long you're together or how torturous the road or how easy the road, just keep loving every moment and loving every piece of the environment as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that note.
On that, we'll have to say goodbye.
All right. Take care, guys. See you.